Now we're going to welcome our speaker to the stage. Joshua Will.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I usually don't know what to do with my hands, but now I don't know what to do with my one. Move this here. And get one set, get situated. Cool. I just want to take a moment to express appreciation and gratitude. I know there's a lot of different things everyone could be doing at 9 a.m. on a Friday morning, so just want to say thank you to everyone that I shared this room with. You guys for coming out. I see a few faces, friends that came up from Denver. I know what that commute was like or is like. It wasn't too terrible this morning, so thanks for coming up. For my Boulder-based friends, thank you guys for coming out, supporting me, showing the love. It means the world to me. And honestly, I just wanted to allow this slide to hang out for a little bit. Todd, Lucian, kind of look at you. I imagine the typeset here. It's causing a little bit of tension. A little friction about those 5 letters of my first name are residing on the A there. And that was initially a mistake, but I just loved how JOSHU was kind of balancing perfectly on that A there. I'll make that. We're going to embrace that tension and kind of use that to ease into the tension of the talk here. Here's a little fact sheet. I'm not going to read through all of this. It's just a visual interest as I go on a little bit of a ramble here. So the theme's Create. And I am the founding partner and creative director of a Denver-based design studio called Consume Create. And the theme Create is a pretty broad topic. A lot of room to wiggle and dance there. There's a lot of different places that I could have taken this. I'm going to share 2 seedlings with you guys today. These are things that I've experienced or discovered personally in my life over the last couple years, or I guess I should say year specifically. From an early age, I was always drawn to and compelled to make. But unlike a lot of people, I didn't possess this natural ability or talent to draw. I really wanted to draw. I remember sitting in front of television, PBS, when I was younger and watching 2 shows in particular. There was one called Secret Cities, and it had this artist who would draw these Martian landscapes. And he just used this black marker and just went at it. He would start with like a circle and whatever, and these like Martian like cities and landscapes would just take shape, and he had these little Martians that pop in and pop out. And then also spent a lot of time in front of the TV watching Bob Ross. Joyce and Bob Ross. He had the hair, he had the fits. He's painting these amazing landscapes and having little trees like nobody's business. And that's when I experienced my first frustrating moment as an artist. I remember breaking out my Crayola watercolors and just lined notebook paper and trying to follow along and paint these mountainscapes and then layer on these happy little trees. And it was not a happy experience for me. I mean, unbeknownst to myself at the time, I wasn't using the right materials, right? Even if I had the right materials, I don't know if it would have made that much of a difference. What took shape in front of me was this messy, abstract monstrosity. And I remember like a few weeks, like sitting down and trying to make this and figure it out and make it work, and it just didn't. I would crumble these pieces up and I'd throw them away, and I kind of just, I wrote that off. And I remember sitting in class as well and just admiring my fellow students' ability to like draw. I'd see people like doodle and draw cars and flowers and all these things, and I just admired that talent, and I wanted to do that so desperately. And my first like breakthrough or success in creativity was actually on the writing side. In fourth grade, I wrote a short story about a bowl of cereal coming to life and trying to eat me. It turned turned the table on me and chased me through my house. And my teacher was stoked on it. I got an A++. It was showcased a little short story, showcased at school. And it was the first time where I was able to take kind of my vivid imagination and give it form. And that just felt super rewarding. Fast forward to early high school days, freshman year. And that's when I really started to be able to develop that mind-muscle ability to actually make art. And that was the result of stumbling across an early source magazine, hip-hop magazine. At the time, they did a feature of graffiti in every issue. And I remember stumbling across an issue on a newsstand and seeing these pages filled with graffiti that was on trains in New York and walls in the West Coast. And I was just drawn to that like a moth to a flame. I was just kind of enamored and possessed. I was like, I am going to learn how to do this. So spent countless hours in my room listening to music in a black book, just trying to copy and replicate those letter forms and those characters. And eventually that mind muscle ability developed. You know, the first few efforts were super wonky, scale was off, proportions were off, things were just, again, kind of a wonky hot mess. But as I started to be able to replicate, emulate what I was seeing in those magazines, it gave me the ability and confidence to start creating my own pieces, kind of putting my own spin on it, my own touch on it. And then started just getting more interested in art and other forms of art, like really drawn to art class, you know, doing watercolors and oil painting, messing with gouache. Still love gouache to this day. And I went to my art teacher and was like, hey, I think I'm interested in like showcasing some artwork and potentially pursuing this as a career. And the underlying theme here is just lots of friction. You know, my pathway into art making and my design practice was not an easy one. It was filled with a lot of friction, and unfortunately, that teacher just didn't extend his hand. You know, he never really made that space or gave me an opportunity to showcase my work. I don't know if it's because I was doing graffiti, and maybe some of that graffiti was showing up in and around school. Who's to say? But took another track, went to my high school counselor and was like, hey, I'm really interested in going to art school. I'm pursuing this as a career. What scholarships look like? What grants look like? Like, what can you do to help me connect the dots here? And again, like, struck out on that effort as well. It was like, sorry kid, no luck. You know, maybe you should go to community college, like study business or something, which was not interested in. Met my beautiful wife, through graffiti and skateboarding, just became more immersed in art, and we had our first child. And after a year or so, I decided to go to art school. And man, like high school just was not it for me in terms of English and math and all those other subjects. I made it through, obviously, but it wasn't something that I really enjoyed. And in art school, being turned on to different art movements and design movements and being given like 4-hour blocks to just create and make, I was just locked in. I was in love. And I was really determined to become a designer, a professional. I was married, I had a family, and I had to make this work. I was also paying my own way through school. And 3/4 of the way through design school, I was taking a layup class and had a teacher who kind of took me to the side. And that segment was focused on typography. Admittedly, was not good at typography at that time. I was just saying I'm really good at it today. But clearly not prolific or good at it in those days. And she very politely, or I guess constructively, came to me and pulled me aside and said, have you ever considered pursuing children's book illustration? which was kind of a nice way of her saying, you're not good at this. Maybe there's some potential over here. And again, that was kind of the final kick in the teeth that I needed, where I was like, okay, I'm getting what you're laying down or trying to communicate here, and I'm going to dig my heels in, and I'm going to learn typography and all the different parts and pieces so I can go out there and get a job as a creative professional in the design world. And also in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I'm going to master this, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to take your job. So there was like a little bit of a revenge plot there as well. Fortunately or unfortunately for her, the Art Institute of Colorado, where I went, lost its accreditation and was forced to close because of predatory practices. So they were bringing a lot of students into that school and strapping them with this crazy amount of debt in return for this subpar and inferior education. And I wouldn't attribute me being here today or my success in the field to that school by any means. Obviously, something happened and I made it here. Access to the library and resources. But again, like kind of underlying theme here, lots of friction. And that manifesto really resonated with me. I truly believe everyone's creative. I think it's an innate ability that we all possess. I think we're all born creative. We're all born and draw to different forms of creativity, whether it be drawing or dance or song or what have you. And then that's just kind of bled from us as we grow up and as we kind of navigate our way through society. So let's get into first evening here. And this one's kind of zooming out and looking at the role that art has played in the world. And as I graduated from the Art Institute and I made my way into the design profession, had some more kids, and I started to experience that kind of friction around art or the pursuit of art through a different lens. When I shared with folks that I wanted to go to design school, a lot of people in my family are like, are you sure that's what you want to invest your time and energy into? It was discouraged more often than not. And then as I see my kids going to school and schools experiencing budget shortfalls, what's the first thing that gets cut? Art, the arts, right? Visual arts, art programs, music. And every time I've experienced that in my life, it just never has sat well with me. Like, it makes me angry, it makes me upset. And I'm the type of artist where I feel things first, and in art specifically, but also in design. I'll kind of get a feeling, I'll have to feel something, and then as I work, the problem and through the project, words start to articulate and surface where I can kind of make sense of that feeling. And this is an identity that my studio is working on along with a creative collective. So we're leading this project for the Latino Cultural Arts Center. It's a pro bono project that different designers and typographers and writers and creatives have donated their time to help bring to fruition. The idea that you're seeing here behind me was created by Dan Quay. He's a Denver-based designer. He used to work for me at Consumer Create, now works at JPR, the global brand agency. The typeface was designed by Ivan Ruiz, a Denver-based typographer, typeface designer. And for this concept, I put forth a direction. But as we've been working our way through this project, there's been lots of curveballs that have surfaced. The first identity wasn't even supposed to be for this, it was supposed to be for something else. But as we're kind of transitioning out of strategy into design and getting prepared to kick off the creative team, Alfredo Reyes, the executive director of the LCAC, came to me and said, I would like to explore repositioning LCAC, the Latino Cultural Arts Center. And I would like it to be positioned or perceived as something other than an arts organization, which felt odd. It's in the name, All their programming is centered around art. I mean, they use art as a way to connect people to past traditions and rituals around altar making and ofrendas and grieving the loss of loved ones. You know, they're using art as this vehicle to enable positive mental health and well-being. And he shared with me the reason why he wanted to explore that positioning. And it was, when I go out there and fundraise, I run into this hurdle every time where people don't want to open up their pocketbooks and fund an arts organization. Or they've already got the arts organization in their portfolio. And it's like, hey, I've checked that box. The money that I've got is going to go elsewhere. And that feeling, again, returned to me, that knot started to develop where I'm like, this just isn't right. Like, it doesn't make sense to position you as something other than an arts organization. And there's real power in art. Like, yes, obviously I make a living doing this, and I'm been drawn to it for as long as I could remember, but there was something more there. And what I'm about to run through is really the foundation of the concept that I presented. It ultimately wasn't selected to move forward, and I love the design direction that we are going to be revealing here in a couple weeks. But as I worked through that research and these insights surfaced, it just really answered that question of like, why does this feel so wrong? Every time I experience art in creativity and the pursuit of being discouraged and dismissed in our life. So there's this notion of art for art's sake. And the whole foundation for my concept wanted to challenge that. And again, inspired by research, I kind of teed up and framed up art is the building block. So to do so, we gotta zoom out and we gotta go way back. So looking at the first form of art, that's where the question started. Like, when did art first surface? What form did it take? So as humans were roaming the world, before we could communicate through verbal language or written language, right? We're gesturing, we're making sounds and grunts and pulling people around and pointing at things. And we start to develop the ability to make marks that represent something, people, places, things. And this develops this notion of symbolic thought, right? We could represent something and say, hey, there's food over here, whether it's plants or animals, there's waters. Here's how we get from point A to point B. Don't go this way because there's a predator or you're gonna die. So it gave us, art gave us this ability to communicate, to be able to share thoughts with each other, to be able to develop that symbolic world. And then as art evolved and re-evolved, it started to take on more meaning. And it started to carry information across time. It started to carry these notions of identity and an observed history and these cautionary tales. And then you see art start to expand. The cave paintings or wall paintings get more intricate. They're depicting things, they're more detailed. You see music start to take shape. You see us start to make vessels to carry and collect and gather things. You start to see patterns develop that represent, who I am, where I'm from. Like, art starts to allow us to make sense of the world around us and our place within it. And then it continues to evolve. Verbal language is all based on the notion of symbolic thought. The word tree isn't a tree, it just represents one. And every written language is based on symbols, right? It's all based on art. And as that continues to evolve and we start to move from hunter-gatherers and start to settle in one place, art propels agriculture. The layouts of planting rows and irrigation systems were all inspired by those early textiles and weaving and patterns that people were wearing and making. And then with the advent of calendars and landscape art and painted manuscripts, those all served as this visual technology that allowed us to track the sun and organize times when we sowed and times when we harvest And they also helped us to organize these ceremonies around that, which again, were all imbued with art. Art drove innovation. Art and engineering have always been intertwined. Design iteration is how we've prototyped things. I think it's best demonstrated by those axes that are on the left side of the screen there. Those are axes from all around the world, where they were experimenting with different forms, right? What's the right way to hold that stone in the shape and the angle? That gave way to more complicated or complex instruments. That's a water world from ancient Mesopotamia, where they were using that to pull water out of irrigation systems. And then architecture related math, material science, and planning. The circuit pyramid down in Mexico, in and of itself, is an amazing piece of art. If you think at the time that that was made, them moving and shaping the material and placing it. But they also did so in a way where during the spring and fall equinoxes, the shadow of a serpent would crawl down the staircase there and meet the serpent's head during those equinoxes. So, they're mapping the stars and plotting and placing that in a way where 2 days out of the year, this amazing piece of art kind of takes shape and then disappears. And then art continues to guide science. Again, as we evolve and things get more complex, it starts to hold and carry more data, more information. After thousands of years of observing the stars, we're mapping the stars. We're creating quipus, which were used by the Incans and other Andean cultures to carry really complex data. I mean, I would argue that's maybe one of the world's first complex infographics. Those quipus carried census data, inventory data, and other logistical data that was carried throughout those civilizations and empires. And a lot of times during architectural digs, early architectural digs, these were found in abundance and just thrown away because they thought that they were just tattered pieces of garments. Like, hey, this is trash. And then one day someone was like, wait, there's actually something here. Maybe this is more than just tattered fragments of garments. And we still haven't fully decoded what these mean. We've got kind of a high level understanding of the information that it carried. And then you move on to things like the Dresden Codex, the Mayan Dresden Codex. I mean, that is pure art. They had a numbering system that was really close to Roman numerals. And the Dresden Codex allowed them to predict solar eclipses to the date. And people are still using the Dresden Codex 800 years later after its creation to do the same thing. So that content, that data, that precision held up.
Hey, bro.
And then art also gave shape to the sacred. Art doesn't just represent gods and spirits, it serves as this portal for us to connect with them, to interact with them. Mass, vessels, figures are more than art. They get activated through procession and ceremony and ritual. Art made the invisible visible, and it gave legitimacy to those spiritual and religious practices. So what does that all mean? Again, going back to that feeling that I've had that's reoccurred, where art gets kind of downplayed and dismissed. Like, going through and coming across all this revealed to me, art is the source code for the world as we know it. Everything that we interface with on a daily basis is built on the foundation of art. Language, math, science, things we're told that hold more value than art wouldn't exist without it. And my wife and I spent a lot of time down in New Mexico, and you travel around different Puebloan villages, pueblos, and you get a glimpse of how and the ways in which art played a role in our daily lives. For thousands of years, art was integrated into our daily lives. It's something that we interacted with, interfaced with. It wasn't something that you went somewhere to look at. All those vessels that now live in museums were things that they used on a daily basis. And it wasn't really until 3 shifts that kind of moved us away as kind of a society, global society from that. You had colonization, you had the Industrial Revolution, and then also the proliferation of capitalism, which has essentially resulted in the commodification of art. Art's a luxury, it's a nice to have. And, if nothing else, I think I've kind of stumbled upon this answer, this validation of the importance in the role that art has played. And I can only imagine that as a society, if we start to embrace it again and leverage it and integrate it back into our daily lives and honor it and practice it and encourage it, just the result that it would have on our world. And moving into the second scene, want to share a little bit more of a deeper personal role that art has played in my life over the last year. So this is a preview of a body of work, and these are portraits of emotions. Now, how did I get here? It was part happy accident. It was also the result of a season of a lot of challenges. My wife was diagnosed with cancer, thyroid cancer, last year. She's cancer-free, but it was a year-long process. Yeah. And she actually went through it. Like, I was along for the journey, right? But she's such a strong woman and had to endure so much. At the same time, had a falling out with my older kids. Sorry. And also experienced, some challenges at work. We all go through these seasons of challenge. I've been through plenty over the course of my life. But this was a really interesting season where there was no place of reprieve. Usually like ill health, if someone was going through ill health, but you can at least like fall back on work or fall back on family. And this was just one of those moments in time where everywhere I turned, it was just hard. There was no reprieve. And I was struggling with debilitating depression, to be honest with you. I didn't want to go to work. I didn't want to make. I didn't want to design. I literally had to force my legs out of bed and just get up and force myself to go to work. And after a couple months of this, I was like, I'm gonna go and start making. I created a little studio space in my garage, and I just forced myself to start making art. Kind of art is therapy. Made a lot of really terrible art at the beginning. Again, wasn't feeling very great. And what was taking shape in front of me wasn't always stoked on. There were some little highlights here and there. This series started out as me wanting to do kind of pixel-inspired art that represented, say, like flowers or faces. And I created one or two of those, and they just didn't turn out how I intended or hoped. And I just drew a face on top of one, and I was like, oh, there's something interesting here. And then I continued to put some embellishments on it. And that led me to some of these early studies. And something that I realized in this moment working through this body of work, this is the first time in my life, my entire life as an adult, a 46-year-old adult, where I'm actually sitting with my feelings and I'm trying to understand them. What am I feeling? Throughout my entire life, I've felt a lot of things, and more often than not, you kind of just react to them impulsively. And this is the first time where I just really wanted to, good, bad, what am I actually feeling? And when I present this work out to the world, I leave it unnamed. I don't name the feeling. It's just feeling number 1 or 2 or 3, and it kind of goes on sequentially. It's something that I debated, but ultimately I like the idea of being able to present this work and share it with people and leaving it open to interpretation. And a little bit about the process. Early on in my art practice, art making was something that I didn't plan out at all. It was just pure improv. I would start painting, and the shape would take hold, and then I would build on that. And then all of a sudden, this kind of character or world would just take shape in front of me. So I was like a participant and also a spectator. And in a lot of that work, I kind of felt almost like a conduit. Like something was flowing through me, creating that art, and I was also watching it take shape. And then as I got further into my design practice, like design's very methodical and intentional and planned out, and I wanted to start exploring making art in that way. And after doing that for a couple years, it's like, this is just a drag. It's not fun. It's not fulfilling or rewarding. Wanted to work my way back to something that was a little more improvisational and expressive. And for me, this body of work just kind of scratches both those itches. There's a fair amount of improv. Like, I'll go into making these pieces of art with an emotion in mind. I'm either experiencing it, I've kind of just let work loose of it, or it's something that I want to capture and convey. So I use circles and I try to kind of create them in a form that expresses that feeling. I'm using color to help express or communicate that feeling or emotion. And then I'm using facial expressions and line work to create that emotion or feeling. And speaking of which, just raise of hands, does everyone in this room know the difference between emotions and feelings? A couple people. Honestly, this is something I just stumbled upon myself. I asked myself this same question, like, is there a difference between emotions and feelings? Like, are they the same thing? And they're not. Emotions are this base, uncontrollable, unconscious feeling that we have that's a reaction to any given scenario. So say a car cuts you off, you immediately feel something. And feelings are the interpretation of that uncontrollable feeling that we have. So someone cut me off, am I feeling vulnerable? Am I feeling scared? Am I feeling angry? And feelings are all based on subjectivity, our lived experience, our culture, our environment, upbringing, those sorts of things. So emotions happen very quickly and they subside. Feelings can continue to linger on and hang around for a lot longer than that. Led me to stumbling upon these two beauties of infographics. On the left here, we've got the wheel of emotions that was developed by a psychologist. And then on the right, that's a wheel of feelings. And there's 8 core emotions: joy, trust, fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, anger, and anticipation. And then as you move in or out, those are levels of intensity of those emotions. So the most intense version of fear is terror. The least intense version of fear is apprehension. And then those emotions in the middle are compound emotions. And then again, like, lots of nuanced feelings and ways those continue to swirl and surface. So kind of returning back to the work, and again, feeling lots of feelings and emotions during this time. And that allowed me to start to explore the nuance between those. And I'll share what each of these mean with you guys here today. So, on the positive side of the spectrum, we've got ecstasy. In the middle there, we've got joy. On the far right, satisfaction. So just being able to sit with and identify, like, I'm feeling good. What kind of good am I feeling? And then tap dancing around the negative side of the spectrum, like, I'm feeling bad. What kind of bad am I feeling today or in this moment? What's the difference between hurt or disappointment or despair or depression? And how can I use, again, color and form and this line work to help communicate that and kind of drive those feelings home or create this portrait of that feeling and emotion? That also allowed me to play with texture. For heartache or hurt over here, it's not these opaque circles. They're kind of swirling around and they're loose and they're a little messy. To me, that really kind of helped to convey that feeling. With disappointment in the middle, you've got these shiny colors in the background. You've got pink and you've got yellow and there's this metallic ink. So these moments of optimism or hope that are getting clouded and overtaken by that feeling of disappointment. So there was an element of happiness or aspiration there. That then kind of turned the corner. And then with despair, depression, using those line works to convey and communicate this sense of falling, right? Kind of losing myself, and there seems to be this kind of motion to it. Elation, contempt, rage. It's been a really fun series to create. It's been really therapeutic for me to make this body of work. And unexpectedly, it had this profound and unexpected impact as people viewed it as well. So these are pictures from an art show. I created initially, I think 20 of these or so. And with the help of my wife and some friends, we held a one-night pop-up art show in a space that was close to the design studio. And we invited some friends that own businesses and creatives and makers to come in and kind of share that space and in their pursuits with us during that night. And what happened, again, I didn't name these. They were all just filling number 1 through 20. So I get to watch and witness as people go up to each of those fillings and just start to interpret, what do they mean? Like, how does this portrait make me feel? What am I interpreting? So that in and of itself was really beautiful. And then Michael here over on the left and his 2 sons, Noah and Landon, came in. And Michael looked at them and was like, I want to buy a piece, but I'm gonna walk the wall. And he and his sons walked up and down the wall. And they had this kind of great and beautiful conversation about each piece. And he was drawn to one of the sad ones. And his oldest son was like, why do you want a sad feeling, Dad? Like, why do we want to hang that on the wall? And I just watched this really beautiful conversation unfold between a father and his sons, where he destigmatized good and bad feelings. And he communicated to his sons, like, we all experience bad feelings. And experience a bad feeling isn't a bad thing. These are all fleeting moments. They come and go. Moments of joy, feelings of joy are impermanent, and thankfully, so are those bad feelings. And he shared with his sons, like, right now in this season of my life, this resonates with me. This is kind of how I'm feeling. Like, Dad's going through some shit, and I'm struggling with some things. And I want to take this home to kind of honor that feeling because it just touches me. And that was just completely unexpected for me. It was very therapeutic making that work, but seeing it be therapeutic on the other side of the equation as people were viewing and interacting with the work was just really, it really filled my cup. And I just see so many different places that this body of work could go. I mean, imagine if these turned into flashcards that kids used in school. Like, why, as a 46-year-old adult, am I just starting to kind of get in touch with my feelings and passions tonight? Like, how much better equipped would I have been if I was taught this and just was shared with me when I was younger? So, that's definitely one avenue or place that I can see the work going. And there's just so many different kind of facets and ways I can see this work coming to life and it benefiting people that have the chance or ability to interact with it. Which kind of just brings me to wrapping things up. The creative process, it's messy, it's iterative, it's time-consuming. It, at least for me, has a really steep learning curve. It took me a while to make my way into the places that I'm at and do the work that I'm doing. But the act of creating has given us so much. It's connected us to each other. It helps us communicate with each other. It's built our world. It's helped us understand our place within the world, and it's helped us understand even the world within ourselves. And, I don't want to go on a tangent or diatribe about AI.
Do it.
Taking stock of everything that art has done for us and everything that it continues to do for us. Why would we outsource that? And if we're outsourcing that ability, to another form of intelligence, well, inevitably it's going to go and build its world. And what and who is that world going to serve? I'm not naive enough or optimistic enough to think that there's going to be a curve on it. I mean, with its use in business, and commerce, and capitalism, and unfortunately, war in military, like it's not going anywhere. But honoring this theme of creation, this theme of making, this theme of art, and everything that it's done for us, would definitely encourage all of us to embrace that messiness. Send an unperfect email. I have no doubt that in years to come, those imperfections and that sense of humanity is going to be something that's seen as a premium. As people and things are becoming more automated and as art making and these sorts of efforts get outsourced, those people that are still doing things by hand. And those pieces of art that have that human touch, I think will continue to resonate with us more than ever. And that's what I've got for you. A couple shameless plugs. I do have an art show coming up next week. Anyone that's in and around Denver on June 5th, I'll be displaying or exhibiting a new body of feelings and emotions in abstract. I've got a QR code here, so if you want to follow along with the fills, I'll be sharing updates there. If you can't make it down on the 5th, that work will be on exhibit for the month of June. And then I'm also in talks and conversations about showing the work in other spaces beyond that. So the fillings will continue to ride. And then another plug for the Latino Cultural Arts Center. This is an organization I believe in. I mean, I've been donating 2+ years of time working on this. If you scan that QR code, it's going to take you to a donation page. So if anyone has the means or ability to donate $5, $10, like what these guys are doing in terms of reintegrating art back into our lives is amazing. It's obviously something I believe in and champion. They're getting ready to open the doors to their own building for the first time in the existence of the organization. They've been around for almost 10 years. And they've got lots of amazing programming that they're taking shape and going to be rolling out. And there's gaps in that we need to fill in terms of funds and capital. If you can't or don't feel compelled to donate today, I'd encourage you to find them on Instagram, to sign up for their newsletters, and just again follow along with this journey. Like the work that they're doing in the community that we're building is nothing short of inspiring to me. And again, just want to thank you guys for your time.